The morning was gray when Evelyn Carter reached her son's doorstep. The sky looked heavy, like it wanted to rain but was too tired. She stood there for a long moment with her small suitcase, listening to the quiet street and the distant sound of a bus. Her hands were still sore from packing the last of her things, and her chest felt hollow in that way grief makes a person feel, like a house with all the furniture gone. Michael opened the door with his phone in his hand. He didn't hug her. He didn't even step aside right away. He just looked at the suitcase and then at her face and said, "You should have told me you were coming this early." "I did," Evelyn said softly. "I sent a message last night." "I was busy," he replied, pocketing the phone. "Come in." She stepped inside and set her suitcase by the wall. The air smelled faintly of coffee and laundry detergent. A thin line of sunlight slipped through the blinds in the living room and landed across a family photo. Michael as a teenager, smiling with braces, hugging his father around the waist. Evelyn felt the stab of it and looked away. "Shoes off," Michael said. "The floor's scratch." "Of course," she said, bending down with a small wince. Her knee still hurt from the last winter's ice, a slip she had never bothered to tell anyone about. She lined her shoes neatly by the door like a guest in a stranger's house. Michael walked toward the kitchen. "You can take the small room, the one near the laundry. Don't put anything on the dresser yet. I still need that space for receipts." "Thank you," Evelyn said. She tried to keep her voice warm, grateful. "I won't be any trouble." "Good," he said over his shoulder. "I'm not running a charity." The words were plain, not shouted, but they landed on her like a door closing. She felt them in her spine. She had heard that tone before, on hard days at the old bookstore, when a vendor refused to extend credit or when a landlord threatened a rent increase. But hearing it from her son made the room feel smaller, like the walls had moved inward. She carried her suitcase down the narrow hallway. The small room had a window that looked out on the neighbor's fence and a square of thin winter grass. There was a single bed, a small metal table, and an empty lamp with no bulb. Evelyn smiled to herself, set her things on the bed, and opened the case. She laid out her sweaters, one by one, soft blues and grays, and smoothed each sleeve with slow, careful hands. Then she took the framed photo of her and her late husband from the case and set it on the little table, facing the door. Richard in his favorite cardigan. Laugh lines at the corners of his eyes. The bookstore sign behind them in the photo, Collins Books, gold letters on dark green paint. "Breakfast," Michael called. "If you want any, come now. I've got work in 20. Evelyn washed her face quickly and followed the smell of toast. Michael was already eating at the counter, standing, scrolling his phone with one hand and holding a mug with the other. A single plate waited for her with half a banana and a slice of toast with butter that had gone hard. "Thank you," she said. She sat, folded a napkin across her lap, and took small bites. The toast was dry. The banana was bruised on one side. She ate all of it anyway. Michael didn't look up. "The thing is," he said, as if she had asked him a question, "I'm not in a position to carry anyone right now. I've got rent. I've got car payments. That store cuts hours when sales dip. So if you're staying here, Mom, you'll have to pull your weight." "I understand," Evelyn said. She made her voice steady and kind. "I want to help." "Good." He drained his mug, set it in the sink without rinsing, and finally met her eyes. "I talked to my manager. There's an opening at the front. Cashier. It's simple. You stand, you scan, you smile. You can start today. I already told them you would." Evelyn's fingers went still around the napkin. "Today? Yes. We need the extra income this month, and frankly, you do too. It's better than sitting around. Get your coat." He walked away like there was nothing more to say. Evelyn washed the mug and plate, wiped the counter, and folded the damp cloth over the faucet. Then she went to the small room, put on her wool coat, and slipped her purse over her shoulder. She paused at the little photo of Richard and touched the glass. "I'll manage," she whispered. "You know I will." The ride to the store was quiet. Michael drove with both hands tight on the wheel, jaw set. He clicked his tongue at a slow truck, changed lanes quickly, and turned the radio on and off in the space of one streetlight, as if even music annoyed him. Once he said, "You should have sold the apartment sooner." Evelyn said, "I sold it as fast as I could," and the car filled with the sound of the heater. They pulled into a small plaza with a laundromat, a nail salon, and a grocery store with clean glass doors and a green awning. The sign above the entry read Barnes Market in white letters. Shopping carts clicked together by the curb. A girl with a ponytail pushed 3 carts at once, her breath white in the cold air. Inside, the floors shone. The soft hum of lights, the chirp of a scanner, the beeping of a register when someone forgot to press total. It all felt familiar in a way that surprised Evelyn. The store manager, a woman with a neat bun and a sweatshirt with the logo, looked up when she saw Michael. "You're late," she said. Her name tag read Kara. "We're short at the front." "Yeah, traffic," Michael said. He put a hand on Evelyn's shoulder and lightly steered her forward. "This is my mother. She'll take the open cashier slot." "I told you." Kara looked at Evelyn, not unkindly but quickly, like she was counting the lines on her face. "Do you have any register experience?" Evelyn smiled. "I ran a bookstore for 3 decades. It wasn't a grocery, but we had a register. We had rush hours. We had returns. We had people in a hurry and people who wanted to talk. I can learn your system." Kara's mouth softened. "All right. We train on the floor. It's not complicated. Just don't get flustered if the line stacks up. People can be impatient." Her eyes flicked to Michael and back. "We'll start you on register 4. Sarah will shadow you for the first hour." Michael cleared his throat. "And make sure she doesn't do price overrides without asking. We've had issues." Kara looked at him for a beat and then said to Evelyn, "Coat in the break room, please. Hair tied if it gets in your eyes. We'll get you a name tag." Evelyn put her coat in the tiny break room with the humming soda machine and a corkboard full of bright flyers. Employee of the month, recipe swap, flu shots on Friday. She washed her hands at the small sink, dried them carefully, and tied back a soft strand of hair with a thin elastic she kept around her wrist. In the mirror, her face looked a little thinner than last year, but her eyes were the same, steady blue, a little tired but awake. Sarah was 22, with neat eyeliner and a quiet, friendly way of speaking. "I'll stand next to you and help if it freezes," she said. "Sometimes the scale hates produce. Don't panic. Just look calm and it usually behaves." "Thank you," Evelyn said. "I appreciate it." The first customer rolled up with a basket of eggs, bread, and a little chocolate rabbit wrapped in foil, even though Easter was months away. "It's for my son," the woman said, half laughing. "He saw it and wouldn't let go. If I take it home now, I can hide it." "Maybe." "That's a good plan," Evelyn said, and she meant it. She held the rabbit with care, scanned it, and set it gently on the far side, as if it might hop away. The woman smiled, a real smile, and Evelyn felt something warm return to her, like turning on a light in a room she had closed up for winter. By the second customer, her hands knew the rhythm. Take, scan, set down. Take, scan, set down. Talk just enough. Ask one question and listen to the answer. She learned the weight of oranges in her palm. She learned the little pause before the scale beeped and the way the produce codes clung to the edge of her thinking. 4,011 for bananas, 4,062 for cucumbers. Sarah whispered the numbers once or twice, but mostly Evelyn remembered. It was like the old days, when she could find a book just by the shape of the spine and the shade of the cover. A man in a heavy jacket asked if the store still carried the rye bread with seeds. "My wife likes the one with the darker crust," he said. "But I never know which it is." Evelyn looked up toward the bakery sign. "Third shelf from the bottom, left side. The darker one has a little white dusting. If you pick up the bag, it will feel heavier than the others." She said it without thinking. Then she blinked and laughed softly. "I'm sorry. That sounded bossy. I've only been here 15 minutes. Sarah stared at her and then grinned. "No, that's exactly right. You're a natural." At 10:30, a line formed, not angry, just long. A child in a blue hat asked if the lollipops near the counter were free. His mother looked like she hadn't slept. "One per kid," Evelyn said gently, pointing to a small sign. "But today, I think I saw 2 kids," she added softly, and the mother's smile was sudden and grateful. The boy picked a red one and said, "Thank you, cashier lady," in a shy voice that made the man behind them chuckle. Michael passed by at 11, a clipboard under his arm. He watched for a second without speaking. Then he said, loud enough for the line to hear, "Mom, you're bagging too slow. Keep your elbows in. Speed matters. People have lunch breaks." Evelyn nodded. "Yes, of course." She didn't look at the line to see who had heard. She kept her hands steady, matched the rhythm of the beeps, and bagged the eggs on top, the bread separate, the meat with the meat, the cleaning supplies with the cleaning supplies. Her cheeks felt hot, but her voice stayed calm. "Have a good day," she said to the next person, and she meant it. When the lunch rush thinned, Kara came by with a small paper cup of water. "You're doing fine," she said. "You have good patience. People feel that." "Thank you," Evelyn said, and the cup shook a little in her hands, not from fear, but from the relief of being seen. At noon, the staff rotated for breaks. Evelyn sat in the break room and ate the cheese sandwich she had packed from home. It was a quiet sandwich, pale, but it tasted like something solid in a day made of moving air. On the corkboard, there was a photo of last month's potluck. People stood around tables with crock-pots and disposable plates. Someone had written in marker at the bottom, "We show up for each other." The letters were a little crooked, and she loved them for that. Michael walked in, grabbed a protein bar, and leaned in the doorway. "You need to move faster," he said. Kara said the line hit 10 at one point. "It did," Evelyn said. "And then it went down again. We managed." "That's not the point," he said. "You can't just chat with people. This isn't a book club." "I'm not chatting," she said, keeping her voice even. "I am serving. People move faster when they feel seen, Michael. You know that." He looked at her like she had said something silly. "I know that I have a schedule to hit and numbers to meet. Just do the job. Don't make this complicated." He left. The door swung once, and then was still. Evelyn finished the last bite of her sandwich and folded the napkin around the crumbs. She looked at the potluck photo again, at the words "we show up for each other," and felt the weight of what it meant to show up when it wasn't easy. Back on the floor, she learned the faces. The teacher with the stack of microwave meals for the week. The young man with paint on his knuckles who bought only bread, milk, and a single rose. The retired couple who moved at the same pace without speaking, putting their items on the belt in perfect pairs. She learned small things, the kind that make people feel less alone. "Did your daughter like the strawberry yogurt?" she asked one woman. "She did," the woman said, surprised and pleased. "She wants to try the peach now." "Third shelf, right side," Evelyn said, and the woman laughed and said, "You've only been here a day?" "Half a day," Evelyn said, and they both smiled. Near 3 o'clock, a boy in a red hoodie tried to pay with a torn bill. He was pale, anxious. "It's all I've got," he said. "My mom's at work." The bill was too damaged for the drawer. Evelyn didn't bend the rules, but she didn't harden either. "I can't take this one," she said gently. "But you can ask at the service desk if they'll exchange it. They might. If they don't, come back. I'll help you find a smaller carton of milk that fits what you have that isn't torn." He nodded, eyes wet. He came back 5 minutes later with a flattened, acceptable bill and a little more air in his chest. By late afternoon, Evelyn's feet ached in a clean, honest way. The store lights were the same brightness as morning, but the day outside had shifted. The sunlight had turned a softer color, and the window glass showed a faint reflection of the aisles like a ghost store laid over the real one. She liked that. It reminded her that there is always more than one layer to a place and to a person. Michael passed again with the clipboard. "Remember to clock out at 5, he said, not looking at her. "And don't take the long way to the time clock. Kara notices." "I won't," she said. At 4:45, the line went quiet. A last customer, an elderly man with 3 items, tea, honey, and lemons, placed them on the belt with slow, steady hands. "My wife has a cough," he said. "She swears by this." "My husband did too," Evelyn said. "Tea, honey, and lemons. It helped him sleep." The words came out before she could stop them. For a moment, the sound of beeps and distant voices faded. The man looked at her with gentle eyes. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said. "Thank you," she answered, and the gratitude she felt was sharp and clean. She bagged the items carefully and handed them to him like a blessing. When the clock struck 5, Evelyn wiped the counter, straightened the pack of gum that always tilted left, and turned off her light. She walked to the time clock and pressed her finger to the pad. The machine beeped, a small sound that still felt like a real marker in the day. Out 5 p.m. flashed on the tiny screen. In the break room, she put on her coat and picked up her purse. She paused at the corkboard one last time. Someone had pinned a small note near the potluck photo. It was written in shaky pen. "Thank you to the person who helped me find the right bread. You made my day easier. Gee." There was no name, just the initial. Evelyn smiled. Maybe it was the man with the heavier rye. Maybe it was someone else. It didn't matter. Someone felt seen. She stepped outside into the blue-gray evening. The air held that first hint of night. Michael stood by the car, checking his messages. He didn't ask how her day went. "How long were you chatting with that old guy?" he said as she reached him. "I saw you. Keep it to a minimum tomorrow. We can't have you slowing things down. Evelyn opened the car door and sat without answering. She folded her hands in her lap and watched the storefront through the windshield. The sliding doors opening and closing, like a breath the building took. On the ride home, Michael talked about schedules, about a new price sign that needed to be printed, about how some people just didn't understand the pressure he was under. Evelyn listened. She nodded when it seemed right. She looked out at the passing houses, each one with a front step and a light over the door, each one with a story she didn't know. Back at the apartment, she made pasta with Jared's sauce and set 2 plates on the table. Michael ate standing up again, scrolling. You can put your things in the hall closet if you must, he said. But not on the top shelf. That's where I keep the tax boxes. All right, she said. And if you're going to cook, do it before 7, he added. The smell sticks. I'll be careful. He finished, set the fork in the sink and said, good first day, I guess. Just faster tomorrow. Then he went to his room and closed the door. Evelyn washed the plates, wiped the counter, and turned off the kitchen light. In the small room, she changed into her nightgown and sat on the edge of the bed. The house was quiet. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once and then stopped. She picked up the photo of Richard from the little table and held it in both hands. I worked a register again today, she said softly. Imagine that. She smiled a small smile. It felt familiar. It felt like when we opened the bookstore on Saturdays and the regulars came in early for the new arrivals. Do you remember the woman who always asked for poetry with less sadness in it? I tried to find her cheerful verses every time. Her throat tightened for a moment, and she let the feeling pass through like a wave. She set the photo back, straightened it so the frame didn't lean. Then she took out a small notebook from her purse. On the first page, she wrote the produce codes she had learned: 4011, bananas; 4062, cucumbers; 4042, limes. She wrote them slowly, neatly, like a student who intends to remember not just tomorrow, but the week after. On the second page, she wrote the names of 3 customers she could recall: Mrs. Dean with the chocolate rabbit for her son, Mr. Whitaker with the rye bread G, who liked to leave notes. She closed the notebook and turned off the lamp. The room fell into gentle dark. The square of grass outside was a deeper shadow beyond the window. Evelyn lay down and let her body rest into the mattress, the kind of tired that meant she had done something that day, something honest. In the quiet, she repeated one sentence to herself, not in anger, but in promise. I will keep my dignity. She said it once. Then again. She said it until the words matched the rhythm of her breath, slow in, slow out. Down the hall, Michael's door opened and closed again. She heard his footsteps to the kitchen, the click of the fridge, the soft buzz of his phone lighting up. For a moment, she remembered him as a little boy, running into their bedroom in his dinosaur pajamas, climbing between her and Richard and pressing his cold feet against her shins, laughing when she shrieked at the chill. That memory was bright as a candle. She held it gently, not to burn herself, just to see by. Morning would come. The register would beep. The line would form. She would stand, she would scan, she would smile. She would be kind without being small. She would help without being used. She would do the job well, not to please Michael, not to prove anything to anyone, but because that was who she was, and because a day well done is a kind of prayer. Outside, a car passed, its headlights sliding across the ceiling in a slow arc. The light moved on, and the room was dark again. Evelyn let out a long breath and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would be another long day, and she would be ready. The next morning, Evelyn woke before the alarm on her small bedside clock. The room was still dim, the sky outside just beginning to pale, and the air had the slight chill of early winter mornings. She sat up slowly, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator down the hall and the occasional creak of the building settling. She moved quietly, careful not to wake Michael. The old habit of rising early, built from decades of opening the bookstore before the first customers arrived, was still with her. She made herself a cup of tea in the kitchen, not bothering to turn on the overhead light. Instead, she let the small lamp on the counter cast a soft glow over the mug, steam curling up in gentle ribbons. She sat at the table with her tea and the small notebook she had started last night. She flipped to the page where she'd written the produce codes and names. She traced each number with her finger: 4011 for bananas, 4062 for cucumbers, and quietly recited them, smiling when she remembered Sarah's surprised look yesterday. The 3 customer names she had written down felt like old friends already. Michael shuffled into the kitchen around 7, yawning, phone in hand. His hair stuck up slightly in the back, and he looked at her like he had half forgotten she was there. "You're up early," he said, opening the fridge. "I've always been up early," Evelyn replied gently. "It's the best time of the day." He pulled out a carton of milk, poured some into a glass, and leaned against the counter while scrolling through his messages. "Work starts at 9 today. Be ready by 8:30. And try to keep things moving this time. Kara told me you talk too much to customers." Evelyn kept her voice calm. "I don't talk too much. I serve them. That's different." Michael gave a short, dismissive laugh. "Same thing. Just remember, people want to get in and out. That's the goal." She didn't answer, just took another sip of tea. She knew from years of experience that sometimes silence was the only way to keep peace. By the time they arrived at Barnes Market, the air outside had brightened, though the sun was still low. Evelyn could see her breath as she walked toward the entrance, the automatic doors sliding open with a soft whoosh. The familiar hum of the store greeted her, soft music overhead, the quiet chatter of early morning shoppers, the squeak of cart wheels. She hung her coat in the break room, tied her hair back, and pinned on her name tag. Sarah waved from register 2. "Morning, Evelyn." "Good morning," Evelyn replied, and her smile was genuine. "Busy day ahead," Sarah said, glancing at the small line already forming at the bakery counter. "They've got a special on fresh bread, and you know how that goes." Evelyn laughed softly. "Yes, I do. People will buy 2 loaves and tell themselves one's for the freezer." By mid-morning, the store was lively. Evelyn had already scanned groceries for a young mother with twin toddlers, one chewing on a toy giraffe, the other holding a box of cereal like it was treasure. She'd helped an older woman find the exact brand of tea her late husband had always loved. The woman had smiled with misty eyes, whispering, "Thank you, dear. That means more than you know." The line at her register moved at a steady pace. She was quick but not hurried. She knew exactly when to say something to a customer and when to keep the small talk to a minimum. The more she worked, the more she found herself slipping into a comfortable rhythm, as if she'd been doing this for years instead of just a day. It didn't take long for Evelyn to notice something. People were starting to choose her line even when others were shorter. She saw it happen 3 times in an hour. A man with only a bag of apples and a carton of milk walked past register 1, looked at the cashier there, then turned to her line. A young couple with a basket of vegetables waited for her even though register 3 was wide open. It wasn't because she was the fastest, she knew she wasn't, at least not yet. But she listened. She remembered faces. She made eye contact. And that, she knew, made people feel comfortable. Around noon, Michael walked past her register. He was carrying his clipboard, eyes scanning the shelves as if looking for something to criticize. He stopped near her counter, pretending to straighten a stack of shopping baskets. "You've got 6 people in line," he said under his breath. "Speed it up." Evelyn kept her hands moving as she answered. "They're moving just fine, Michael. Look." She nodded subtly toward the end of the counter, where the last customer in line was already unloading her cart. Michael frowned. "It's not about fine. It's about faster. Just keep chatter to a minimum." Evelyn bit back the urge to remind him that she was doing well and that the customers seemed happy. She had learned long ago that arguing in the middle of a shift only caused trouble. By early afternoon, the steady hum of the store began to slow. People drifted out with their bags, and the aisles felt wider, calmer. Evelyn used the quiet moment to restock the small impulse shelves near the register: gum, mints, little packs of tissues. As she was arranging the mints, a man in his late 50s walked in. He had a tall, straight posture and a quiet confidence that made people instinctively move out of his way. He wore a dark wool coat and a navy scarf, and he walked with purpose, his eyes scanning the store as if taking in every detail. Michael spotted him immediately. Evelyn noticed how quickly her son's demeanor changed. His back straightened, his voice softened as he greeted the man with a respectful, "Good afternoon, sir." The man gave a polite nod but didn't stop to talk. He moved through the aisles, occasionally picking up an item, looking at it, and setting it back. Evelyn returned to her register, serving the few customers in line. She didn't think much about the man until he eventually approached her counter with a basket. Inside were a loaf of fresh bread, a jar of honey, and a box of imported tea. Evelyn smiled as she began scanning. "These are all good choices. The bread is especially fresh today. It was baked this morning." The man studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly as if he were trying to place her face. "Excuse me, your name tag says Evelyn Carter. Did you once own a bookstore?" Evelyn paused, her hand still on the bread. "Yes. Carter's bookstore. My husband and I ran it for many years." The man's expression lit up with recognition. "I knew it. You helped me once, years ago. I was looking for a graduation gift for my daughter, and you recommended a book of essays. You even wrapped it for me in green paper with a gold ribbon." A warm, almost startled smile spread across Evelyn's face. "I remember that book. I'm glad you liked it. My daughter still has it," the man said. "It's one of her favorites." He studied her for another moment, then added, "I'm Richard Hale." The name meant nothing to Evelyn at first, but she noticed how Sarah, who was bagging groceries at the next register, had gone very still, watching them. Evelyn didn't know it yet, but this man was more than just a friendly customer. He was the owner of Barnes Market, the entire chain. Richard smiled again, his tone thoughtful. "It's rare to see that kind of personal touch these days. I'm glad to see you haven't lost it." Evelyn thanked him, still unaware of just how important this encounter would become. But she could feel something shift in the air, like a door quietly opening in a room she hadn't even known was there. Evelyn's fingers hesitated for just a second over the loaf of bread before she scanned it. The beeping sound of the register felt sharper than usual, almost like it was cutting through the moment. She looked at the man across from her, Richard Hale, and tried to place him again in her mind. Not just his face, but his presence. The calm way he stood, the way he noticed things without seeming in a hurry. "I have to say," Richard said, setting his wallet on the counter, "I'm not often surprised in my own stores." "Your stores?" Evelyn asked gently. "Yes," he said, almost casually. "Barnes Market. All 12 locations. I'm the owner." The hum of the store around them seemed to dim for a moment. Evelyn's mind worked quickly. She thought of Michael greeting him so stiffly earlier, of the way the younger employees had gone quiet when he walked in. And now, here he was placing his groceries on her conveyor belt like any other customer, smiling at her as though they'd just run into each other on a quiet street. "I didn't realize," she said softly. He chuckled. "Most people don't. I don't walk around with a name badge or a title on my chest. I like to see things as they are. And today, I saw something I don't see often enough." "What's that?" Evelyn asked, genuinely curious. He leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice so that it carried a touch of confidentiality. "Someone working a register who actually looks at people. Not just their groceries, but them. You remembered what my daughter's book looked like after more than a decade. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "I just remember faces and moments. It's part of who I am." "That's exactly the point," Richard said. "And it's something you can't teach in a training manual." Before Evelyn could respond, Michael appeared at the end of the counter, clipboard in hand. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his voice tight. His eyes flicked between her and Richard, though he seemed to be more focused on Richard. "Everything's fine," Richard said pleasantly, though his tone carried a certain weight. "Your mother and I were just catching up. We've met before long ago." Michael's brow furrowed. "Oh, I didn't know that." "No," Richard said, looking directly at him now. "I imagine you didn't." The silence that followed wasn't long, but it was enough for Evelyn to feel the shift. She could see Michael's confusion, his nervousness. He didn't seem to know whether to stand there or move on. Eventually, he gave a small, stiff nod and muttered, "I'll let you finish," before walking away. Richard placed the jar of honey on the belt. "How long have you been working here, Evelyn?" "Since yesterday," she said. "My son, well, he brought me in. Said the store needed an extra cashier." Richard's eyes sharpened slightly, though his expression stayed polite. "And how are you finding it?" Evelyn hesitated, not wanting to sound ungrateful, but she also had no desire to lie. "It's honest work. I don't mind it at all. Though," she gave a small, almost self-conscious shrug. "It's been a long time since I had to stand this long on my feet." He smiled knowingly. "Bookstores have more chairs, don't they?" "They do," she said, smiling back. When she handed him the bag of groceries, he didn't take it right away. Instead, he rested his hand lightly on the counter. "Would you have a few minutes to speak with me privately before your shift ends?" Evelyn blinked. "Privately?" "Yes. My office is just upstairs. It won't take long. I'd like to discuss something with you." "Of course," she said, though her mind immediately began wondering what this could be about. Richard gave her a polite nod, took his groceries, and walked toward the exit. Several employees watched him leave, their eyes following his tall frame until the doors closed behind him. The next 2 hours of her shift felt longer than the whole morning. Evelyn worked steadily, scanning and bagging, but her mind kept returning to Richard's words. A private meeting? Why? She wasn't in trouble, she hadn't done anything wrong. If anything, his tone had been warm, respectful. But still, she felt a nervous hum in her chest, the same feeling she used to get before big business decisions at the bookstore. At exactly 4 o'clock, Kara walked over to her register. Evelyn, Mr. Hale would like to see you upstairs now. I'll cover your station. Evelyn untied her apron, smoothed her blouse, and followed Kara toward the back of the store. She could feel Michael's eyes on her from somewhere near the dairy section, though he didn't say a word. They climbed a short set of stairs to a small hallway lined with framed photographs. Black and white images of the first Barnes Market store in the 1970s, snapshots of employees over the years, newspaper clippings about community events. At the end of the hall was a plain wooden door with a brass plaque, Richard Hale, owner. Kara knocked once, then opened the door. Evelyn Carter, sir. Richard was standing by the window, looking out over the parking lot. He turned when they entered. Thank you, Kara. That'll be all. Kara left, closing the door quietly behind her. Please sit, Richard said, gesturing to a chair near his desk. Evelyn sat, folding her hands neatly in her lap. I'll get straight to the point, Richard began. In my years of running this business, I've learned that skills can be taught. Manners, professionalism, and genuine care for customers cannot. You have those things in abundance, Evelyn. And I think this store, and possibly my entire chain, could benefit from them. She blinked. I'm not sure I understand. I'm offering you a position, Richard said simply. Not as a cashier. As a customer relations manager for all my stores. You'd train others, help improve service, and make sure every location treats customers the way you do. The salary is significantly higher, and the position comes with benefits. Evelyn's mouth went dry. That's very kind of you. But there's more, he said, his voice firm but calm. I've been hearing things about your son, Michael, from other employees. And today, I saw for myself how he speaks to people, especially you. That is not the kind of leadership I want representing my stores. Her stomach tightened. I see. I'll be speaking with him later today, Richard continued. But I wanted to speak with you first, to offer you this role before anything changes. This is based on your merit, Evelyn. Not on him. You've earned it. For a moment, Evelyn couldn't speak. She thought of the cold way Michael had greeted her at the door, the brusque orders in the store, the quiet dismissal of her experience. And now, sitting here, she felt something else, relief, not just for the job offer, but for the fact that someone had actually seen her. Mr. Hale, she said finally, I would be honored to accept. He smiled, standing to shake her hand. Excellent. We'll start the paperwork tomorrow morning. And don't worry, this will be handled professionally. You deserve respect, Evelyn. From everyone here. As she left his office, she felt taller somehow, her steps lighter. She knew the conversation with Michael would come soon. But for the first time in weeks, she wasn't afraid of it. She had her dignity back, and something told her this was only the beginning. The next morning, Evelyn woke with a quiet resolve. She had accepted Richard Hale's offer the previous afternoon, but the full reality of it hadn't settled in until now. Today wasn't just another shift at Barnes Market, it was the day everything would change. She dressed neatly in a dark navy blouse and pressed black slacks, her hair pinned back in a smooth twist. No apron today. No name tag at the register. In her bag, she carried only her small notebook and a pen. Michael barely looked at her when she entered the kitchen. He was pouring cereal into a bowl, his phone propped against the carton of milk, so he could scroll while eating. You ready for work? He asked without glancing up. Yes, Evelyn said calmly. Though my schedule will be different starting today. Michael frowned, finally looking at her. Different? What do you mean? You'll see, she said, keeping her tone neutral. He shrugged, clearly uninterested, and went back to his cereal. When they arrived at the store, the usual buzz of morning activity filled the air, carts clattering, the scent of fresh bread drifting from the bakery, the steady beep of registers starting up. But there was a slight tension among the staff today, an unspoken awareness that something was about to happen. Richard Hale was already there, speaking quietly with Kara near the front. His presence alone seemed to straighten everyone's posture. When he spotted Evelyn, his face broke into a warm smile. "Good morning, Evelyn," he said. "Ready for our meeting?" "Yes," she replied. Michael looked between them, confused. "Meeting? With you?" he asked Richard. "That's right," Richard said. "Why don't you join us, Michael? I think it's best we speak together." Something in Richard's tone made Michael hesitate, but he followed them toward the office upstairs. Inside the office, Richard gestured for Evelyn to sit in the same chair she had used yesterday. Michael took the seat beside her, resting his clipboard on his lap like a shield. Richard sat behind his desk, folding his hands. "I'll get straight to it," he began. "Yesterday, I had the pleasure of meeting Evelyn properly for the first time in years. I recognized her from a kind interaction at her old bookstore, and after watching her work here, I realized she has a skill that is rare and valuable." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "She's fine at the register, sure, but—" Richard held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "She's more than fine. She has the ability to connect with customers in a way that improves the entire store atmosphere. That's why I offered her a position as customer relations manager for all Barnes Market locations." Michael blinked. "Wait, you what?" "She accepted," Richard continued. "She'll start immediately. The position comes with a significant pay increase and housing assistance, so she'll be moving out of your apartment within the week." Evelyn glanced at her son, whose face had gone from shock to something harder to read, part confusion, part disbelief. "That's great," Michael said slowly. "But why are you telling me this like it's—" "Because," Richard interrupted, his tone sharpening, "we also need to address your conduct." Michael straightened, defensive. "My conduct? I've received multiple reports from staff about your behavior," Richard said evenly. "Dismissing employees in front of customers, refusing to take responsibility for mistakes, and, most concerning, publicly undermining your own mother while she was working." "That's not—" "I saw it with my own eyes," Richard said firmly. "Yesterday. It was the final straw. I cannot have someone in a supervisory position who treats people like that, especially family." Michael's face flushed red. "You're firing me? Over this?" "I'm relieving you of your position, yes," Richard said without hesitation. "You may collect your final paycheck at the end of the week. Until then, you're no longer in a leadership role. You can take a standard staff position if you wish, but that's the only option." The silence in the room was thick. Evelyn could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the corner and the distant chatter of employees downstairs. Michael turned to her, his voice tight. "Did you know about this?" "I knew he was unhappy with how you treated people," Evelyn said quietly. "Especially me. But this is Richard's decision." For a moment, Michael looked like he wanted to argue, but then he slumped back in his chair. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "It's very believable," Richard said calmly. "Actions have consequences." The meeting ended quickly after that. Michael left the office without looking at Evelyn, his steps heavy on the stairs. Richard stayed behind with her, going over the details of her new role, training schedules, store visits, customer service policies. When they walked back onto the floor together, heads turned. Word had already spread that something had happened upstairs. Kara smiled warmly at Evelyn, and Sarah gave her a discreet thumbs up from Register 2. Evelyn's first task was to shadow staff interactions at the front of the store. She moved between registers, observing, offering small tips. She showed one cashier how to pack fragile produce so it wouldn't bruise, suggested to another that they greet customers by name if possible. Her approach wasn't about correcting, it was about encouraging. By lunchtime, she had already made a difference. The energy at the front of the store felt lighter, warmer. Even customers seemed to notice. One elderly woman leaned across the counter and whispered, "It's nice to see someone who remembers the little things." Evelyn smiled. It's the little things that matter most. That evening, when she returned to Michael's apartment, the air felt different. Michael was sitting at the table, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had gone cold. "So, you're moving out?" he asked without looking up. "Yes," Evelyn said gently. "Richard offered housing with the position. It's a small apartment near the main office. Quiet. Just what I need." Michael nodded slowly. "I didn't mean for things to get like this." "I know," Evelyn said. "But meaning well and doing well are not the same thing." He looked at her then, his eyes tired. "I'm sorry, Mom." She gave a small nod. "Thank you. I hope you remember something, Michael. Respect isn't something you give after you've lost everything. It's something you give from the start." A week later, Evelyn stood in her new apartment, boxes half unpacked, sunlight streaming through the window. She set the framed photo of her and Richard on the kitchen counter, the same one she had kept by her bed. She was working again, but on her own terms. She was building something new, something she hadn't expected to find so late in life. And for the first time in months, she felt entirely herself, steady, capable, and valued. Downstairs, the street was busy with people carrying shopping bags, chatting, living their lives. Evelyn watched them for a moment, smiling. She knew some of them would end up in her stores. And when they did, they'd be treated the way she had always believed customers should be treated, like people who mattered. Because now, she was in a position to make sure of it.